So I try to be a good man. I always give it my best. But truth be told, someday I wanna go to the wild, wild west.
And now, live from our Smokehouse studio, it's time for Real Estate Jerky. All your real estate questions answered by our provocatively lean expert host, Ed Parcaut, MBA, veteran, and president of Lending for Living. And today's special expert guest, real estate advice you won't find anywhere else. Plenty to chew on, starting now.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to be here with my guest, Doug Ridenour. He's a candidate in the upcoming mayor race of Modesto. How you doing, Doug?
Very good. How you doing, Ed?
Good. A lot of people don't realize you used to be in the studio here, 10 years ago? How long ago was it when you did the Behind the Back?
Yeah, I did it for 12 years, and I don't remember exactly how long it's been since we haven't been here, but it was 12 years total.
Well, thanks for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so, Doug, a lot of people don't realize why we do Real Estate Jerky, the show. We do it because it's important for people to understand where the market is. We went through a downturn in 2008, and a lot of kids saw their parents lose homes. They lost, and so a lot of those kids today are of the age to be purchasing homes, and they're not because they saw what their parents went through. So we want to educate our community on why it's important. And one of the other things that we think is important is the fact that we talk about the community that you're going to live in and why it's important. So that's why we do the show. We're changing it up kind of today while having you on it because we're talking about, this is the first election since we've been in our existence. We've been a little over a year, and this is the first election that's coming up. So we thought we'd bring in some candidates and talk about who they are and what they stand for, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. It really does. I think it's timely. It really is.
Yeah, thank you. And if you guys have any questions or comments, you can reach us 24/7 by dialing pound 250 from your mobile. Say the key phrase Real Estate Jerky, and you'll get right in. Or you can also email us your comments at radio@realestatejerky, and you also can find us on Twitter. So, Doug, let's quickly, history of Modesto. You know anything about Modesto?
I do. I've born and raised here. This will be 68 years that I've lived here in Modesto. I've been here my whole life, with the exception of a few times that I've taken jobs from out of Modesto. I've always had my home base here. My family lives here. All my family lives here. I have 4 brothers and a sister, and we've all still live here in Modesto. So Modesto's been our home, and it's our future. It's been our career. It's been our family. And so Modesto's the place that we chose to live our life.
Wow. And full disclosure, your sister is my wife's aunt. That
Yes.
doesn't mean I like you. It just means that we're related somehow.
And it doesn't mean that I'm crazy about you either, but the reality is that you guys bring a tradition to us that, the fact that she was related to your family on your end of marriage, right. So it's been enjoyable.
A lot of people don't realize Modesto was founded in 1870. It was a railroad stop connecting Sacramento to Los Angeles, and originally to be named Ralston after the financier William Ralston, Ralston's goats, and I think it was they came up with a motto, and the runner-up is the one that we took, which is water, wealth, commitment, health, and that's what our town is known for.
Yes.
Right?
It's interesting history because that was not the first choice.
Right.
The first choice was, and I'm sure I'm going to mess this up, but I think the one that was preferred was you don't get Modesto's goat.
It was actually nobody's got Modesto's goat.
Something to that. Yeah.
So you're close.
Yeah,
You don't have the paper in front of you. You could have just read it off of that.
I could have, but I'm talking to you, so it's hard for me to talk and read at the same time.
That's all right. And I didn't realize, population was about 1,000 in 1884, and then 4,500 by 1990, and then Modesto grew about 2% a year over, and then I think in 1980, 200. Now I think we're at 203 some thousand.
On the sign that they say it's closer to around 215,000.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Even though the signs say less.
The reason is that the signs don't get updated, and then they wait for the census, and so. Again, you have to wait until those figures come out, but the information that I have is around 215,000.
So we'll get into the census part later, but I want to go back to Modesto and you guys growing up here. What's your favorite memories growing up in Modesto?
Well, I have a lot of them. I think one of the most interesting parts was that we used to live on McHenry Avenue next to Minnie's. That's there right at 5 Points. In fact, their I think it's their patio today. Our two-story A-frame home was next to that, and then you had the adult bookstore that was actually our area that we played in. Back then, the McHenry was like only 2 lanes, so our front yard actually was out in the first lane of McHenry southbound, and so a lot of my great memories, and I was just probably 7, 8 years old at the time, is that my dad worked in the ambulance business, and that's where we ran out of that house in the ambulance business. So that was great memories. I went to Lincoln Junior, or not, elementary school, which is Smart and Finals there today. And so those are great memories because I remember those things as a young kid.
Right, and how different the town has become.
So much different. I remember back in those years, I don't know if it was exactly that year, but I remember the sign at one point said there was 48,000 people in Modesto, and that was logged in my memory, was that way for a long time. I don't recall the exact years, though.
Right. Now, you said the ambulance business. Wasn't your father and one of your brothers started AMR or something like that?
No.
Or what, how does it? Yeah.
Jim, my brother, my oldest brother, he actually worked with my dad in an ambulance called Community Ambulance back in the 50s, mid-50s. And Jim continued to work in the ambulance sector and did that for like 45 years until he retired some years later. And so we just grew up in it. And it was one of the first careers I had, something I was raised in it, so I was familiar with it. My family's, I think every one of us boys at one time or another worked in the ambulance sector.
Now, let's go about your work history, right? So ambulance, you didn't start the PD till you were older, is that correct?
Well, actually, I started in 1972, so I was 21 years old as a police reserve, and I stayed there for 16 years, and then I got hired full-time in 1988, and then I spent my career until I retired in 2013.
I remember reading something about Prop 13.
Yes.
And about you, I don't...
Well, in 1977, I was in a police reserve during that time, but we got involved in the restaurant business in McHenry Village. And at the same time, that business wasn't doing well, and so I needed to try to find a career. And so I put myself through the police academy as a police reserve in 1977 and graduated in 1978. And I think the month that I graduated was Proposition 13 passed. And that just basically put on any kind of public jobs completely number of years before you could even get applied or get even anybody interested in looking at you as a police officer.
A lot of people don't realize Prop 13 actually froze pretty much the property tax at that point for everything across the board. That was residential, commercial, everything.
That's correct.
And they're currently looking at trying to change it right now. Originally they were trying to do it for residential under some plan. Now they've abandoned that, thank goodness, and now they're looking at just commercial.
And I don't know a lot about it, but I was reading up about it here last week, and it sounds like you're right. The residential, they've set that aside, realizing that's probably going to be a really political battle to overcome that, and now they're looking at the commercial side.
Well, if they just put on the ballot as we mark, if you mark no, you get it, and you mark yes, you don't get it, they'll pass it no matter what, because nobody reads the ballots anymore. Yeah. They just want to mark no on everything.
But I think it's worth mentioning that people need to look into that, and if that's what they want to do, if that's what they want to look at, redoing, it's something that I think the community needs to really study up on.
Right, and you should. I mean,
Absolutely.
Anything changes on the ballot, you really should look into it before you actually go and vote on it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people just quickly go in and read the first line here and there, and then they just vote. And a lot of times that bites you in the, you know what?
And we as the community, as citizens, need to be paying attention, because anytime that you're going to raise taxes or change taxes, we need to be conscientious about it, knowing is there a justification for doing that. Proposition L was one of them, Measure L. Right. That was something that I supported. I typically don't support increased taxes, but Measure L made a lot of sense to me, because all of us need to be involved if we're going to ever change our infrastructure.
All right, so we'll pick that up when we come back.
You bet.
We'll be right back with my guest, Doug Ridenour, candidate in the upcoming mayor of Modesto election. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can dial pound 250, say the key phrase Real Estate Jerky, and you'll get to us, and we'll talk to you when we get back. All right. Perfect. That was the first 10 minutes. Yeah, I didn't realize that the current mayor, how much money he has already.
Yeah. I haven't looked at it. How much you got?
Like 52 grand.
Yeah. That's probably pretty normal.
Is it? With the normal kids?
Well, you can
What do you not want to talk about?
I don't care.
Okay.
I'll talk about it. If there's something.
All right, we'll go back to your Measure L so we don't just leave that out there, and then we'll go forward. Okay?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
We're ready.
Real Estate Jerky is back on Power Talk 1360. Chew on that.
That's right, we're back. And for those of you just tuning in, I'm Ed Parcaut, your mortgage advisor with Lending for Living, and your host. And I'm here with my guest today, who is Doug Ridenour. He is a candidate in the upcoming mayor of Modesto elections. Doug, thank you again for being here.
You bet.
All right, so when we went to break, you were talking about Measure L and how you supported it. Did you want to add on to anything there? Or
Well, one of the things we were talking about, it caused taxes in general, but Measure L, why that made sense is that as you saw Stockton and how they were growing and improving their infrastructure. And we weren't doing any of that. And it's because we were not committed to paying, having a measure in front of us where all of us pay in. That gave us the benefit of access to federal and state monies that would come into our city. That doesn't mean that we'd always be ignored if we didn't pass it. It just means that you and I would probably not be alive because it would happen much later on in life, very slow. And infrastructure, building roads and relaying roads and those kinds of things, those are things that are costly, and all of us need to be involved in every single one of us to some degree or another, participating in driving on the roads or riding on the roads or some infrastructure transit position. So I thought it was important. I'm glad it passed, and you see the significant changes just in that short time in Modesto.
right now, that L was different than the gas tax.
Yes.
Right? And so, what about the gas tax?
The gas tax was obviously a state thing, and so I wasn't connected with that as much, but because it was the local Measure L is what we were participating. But SB1 is one of those abilities that gave us the ability to, in addition to the Measure L, to enhance what we already have. And that's why we're being able to do things like Highway 132. Hopefully we'll be able to improve Briggsmore and Stanford. Those are regional projects. And another regional project that's not talked about much is the east side, Faith Home down in Turlock all the way to Riverbank. And if that would open up, it would have an east side expressway type of road that would bring traffic from Turlock, Los Banos, in that area, on the east side all the way into Riverbank, Oakdale, and up into that area. That would open up, obviously, development on the east side of Modesto.
Okay. Now, I'm always given stuff I should ask you, and one of the things they were saying, what about Modesto's livability, real estate investment, home ownership, affordability, jobs, parks, roads, sidewalks, lighting, and law enforcement. There's a lot of issues. What are you hearing out there that's important to your constituents?
Well, some of the things that Modesto is a big area, and it serves a diverse population, and there's pockets within Modesto that are dealt with differently. For example, in the Village 1 area, that lives out there, if you pay a couple different types of taxes to upkeep the infrastructure, the landscape, and those kinds of things. So those folks that live up in that area, which I do, we have to pay two separate taxes for that. In some areas, they don't pay additional taxes. They just pay the regular taxes. So the process is very, very slow. In the Village 1 area, if something needs to be repaired, it tends to get repaired depending on the structure of the funding at that time can get repaired very quickly. And areas that don't pay that tax and don't have that funding, they tend to wait a long time in order to get those things repaired.
Are you talking about Melrose?
Melrose is the key thing that those areas have.
Okay. What else do you want to bring up?
Well,
I mean, because I threw a lot at you.
No,
I mean, because one thing I did to your brother when he was mayor, every time I saw him talk, the first thing I brought up was, what are you going to do about the homeless?
Yeah.
Right? We can get into that later.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'd like to continue on the infrastructure. So
It's your show.
And then you have other areas that, especially like county pocket areas, like the airport area, the South Modesto area, the west side, who have county pockets within the city. And so they're still served by the county because they're not annexed into the city. And the problem with that is that those areas don't have the city services. They don't have the sidewalks and the streets and that are improved on. They don't have the water and the sewer typically. So those areas are within the city, but they're not annexed in the city. They still have the sheriff's department come out and do any kind of policing and those kinds of things, but they're surrounded by the city. And because of that, so you have basically city services surrounding, and many times it has an impact to us directly because the fire departments, because primarily is served by the city, they serve those areas. And the police departments tend to be active in those areas because they're within the city. So at some point, my goal would be is to sit down and address those things on how we might progress those kinds of pockets to improve on them. But it's very costly. If the city would not necessarily have the justification or the willpower to take those pockets over without having some kind of funding by the county or the state that would improve those districts before they become annexed into the city. However, that being said, I think it's important to sit down and have a dialogue again about how we might progress in that area.
Because a lot of people don't realize, like on some of those streets, one side's connected to the sewer, the other side's a septic still.
Well,
right?
and some of those things are ideally they're being improved on because the city services do connect in many of those areas, and depending on their agreements and things that the county and the city have, they can actually improve those things even if they're in the pocket areas. The reality is that time moves on, the city grows, and we need to clean up those pockets as soon as we can.
Okay. So what else are you hearing out there?
Well, lots of other things that I think the infrastructure is very, very important. But in addition to the infrastructure, I think the economy is something that more and more, especially the younger generation, wants to live in Modesto, and they want to have a vibrant city. And that being said, they really want to have a vibrant downtown. And that's one of the things I've been excited about since I've been council is to be able to look at, and we're currently going through a restructuring plan on how we might look at downtown differently with kind of a master plan for downtown. That has been done, and now we're going through the next phase to where they bring all that data to us, and then eventually the council will sit down with the input from the citizens, and then we'll make a decision on what we think the future of the downtown is going to look like. And so we're actually working on that right now. Within the next week or so, we're going to be sitting down and having another phase in that process.
Okay. And that would be one of those, I think I've seen it because I was in Leadership Modesto, and we did the sidewalks, the symbols next in front of Gallo. Yeah. And then a couple years prior to that, they did the 10th Street change, where they fixed that and then they've done other projects in town since then. But one of those changes was to make J Street into 2 lanes or something, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, how do they feel about that? Do they want that? Do they not want that?
Some didn't want it, and a lot of people did want it. It was kind of one of those things that it's a kind of a mixed view. Any of those kinds of processes are important, but only after you actually have a comprehensive downtown plan on what it will look like. And then you can bring those plans and recommendations from the community and the council, and they make a decision. And now we have a general plan for downtown that we can look a number of years down the road and say, this is what we're working towards. So J Street can't be done this year or 3 years down the road. Maybe it can happen 4th year, 5th year, or whatever. And we might be able to still look at other possibilities because of funding sources. So that's where we're at right now. And I'm excited about that because I think downtown is going to it's starting to look different today.
Right.
If you look at what's happening today without that master plan, there are businesses that are coming downtown because they're starting to see the vibrancy of the potential vibrancy for downtown, and they're getting excited about it.
All right. Now, is that a public master plan, or where it's like someplace they can go online to see it, or
it is? You get on the website, Modesto website. They'll have information on that, and they had the consultants here just about a month or two ago, maybe a couple months ago, and they had a process that went on for a couple weeks, and people had participated. Actually, got down there. It was part of the recommendations that will ultimately come to the council.
Okay. All right, so we have downtown that's important to you, the outlying areas that are not part of Modesto, right there, the county area pockets. What else?
Well, I think we have to continue to work with the county, too. Is one of the things that we've struggled as a city is that we tended not to work with them as close as we should have. And that's a kind of a jurisdictional relationship kind of a thing, and that builds on people who are elected. And to establish relationships with the county or other jurisdictions, especially in the region, because it's not just about the city of Modesto, nor is it just about the county of Stanislaus. If we can work together and look what would be the very best for the county, including the cities, then we all ought to be involved in it, the smaller cities as well. So one of the things that my goal would be, and has been since I've been there for 4 years, is to establish and improve the relationship that I have with the region, the county, and other cities. And I think we have done a better job in doing that.
Okay. What about law enforcement? Anything there?
Yeah, law enforcement is one thing about public safety is that you have to have public safety. It's always going to be a need for that. I think the county and the city has worked together closely and tried to improve their relationships where they can build their mutual understandings about how they can police together. But more specifically within the city of Modesto is that it's always been a challenge and has been a challenge for a number of years in hiring police officers. The fire department doesn't experience that as much, but the police officers do. And it's not just a city of Modesto problem. It's a national problem. There's a national problem of people not wanting to become police officers like they used to back when I started. I went to do my test. It took with 500 people. Today they can't even get maybe half a dozen of people that are interested really and wanting to be there. And if they do, many of them can't become qualified because their background or other issues that they have. One of the important things in law enforcement and fire as well is that you cannot reduce your level of assurances to make sure that applicants are the type of people that should and could be public safety officers and firefighters. Why is that important? Because you're responsible for the public.
Right.
So you have to go out and you got to respond and you got to do things right and you got to have the character that police officers and firefighters need.
Okay. We have a few more seconds before break. Anything a little add on there?
Well, a little add on is obviously the homeless. I think we're gonna get into that. A huge thing that we need to think about, and it does connect with our public safety. In fact, we're dealing with that even as of today. How we're closing down Mo's right now and bringing people to the Salvation Army. Those are the kinds of things that are really, really important.
Let's pick that up when we come back. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's time to go to a break. And for most of you know that I'm a vet and I like supporting veteran-owned businesses. So if you know a veteran who could use some advertisement, please have them contact us at #250. Say the key phrase, Real Estate Jerky. Give us that information and we'll take it from there and we'll talk to you when we get back. All right, only 2 more seconds. This next one's 12 minutes and then the last one's 9.
Where'd you get the Real Estate Jerky thing?
It was in 2010, everybody was doing blogs, and I came up with it.
Oh, I thought it was because I called you a jerk.
Yeah, that's it.
And you just put the E on it,
Yeah.
Jerky.
No, it gives you something to chew on,
I like it.
and no one forgets it. That's the best part of it.
Doing great.
Yeah.
Fabulous. You
Great.
are, that's the difference. You have abilities that no one can learn.
Wow.
You have a family that served the community for decades. You've served the community in serious things. So one of the things that I had written on there and I
You're
had
running late.
a segue for was cruising and graffiti.
Okay.
It's 1:24 right now,
And the segue
and we
was,
got 12 and 9.
did you cruise when you were a kid? That was the segue, and you can ask him.
I'll do my best to get that back to that.
Yeah, because they're the things that people care about, and you articulate it so well.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll go back to the homeless, and then
Okay.
you can bring us into something about roads or something, and then I'll ask you about cruising.
Cruising, okay.
You got it?
Real Estate Jerky is back on Power Talk 1360. Chew on that.
That's right, we're back, and I'm Ed Parcaut, your host, mortgage advisor for Lending for Living. And I'm here with my guest, Doug Ridenour. He is a candidate in the upcoming mayor of Modesto election. Doug, all right, so before break, we were talking about homeless, and then we were talking about law enforcement, and I think we never got into roads, but did you want to add on to the homeless, or do you want to move into something else?
I think it's important for us to talk about homeless. One of the things I hear about mostly is homeless issues, trees, roads. Those are very important to the citizens, and I think it's something worth talking about. One of the things that you have to think about, and I've changed my opinion being a police officer for over 41 years, is that we tend to not be appreciative of our surroundings, especially those folks that are homeless. And we do have a homeless issue here, just like anywhere else in the country and probably the world. The one thing I think Modesto has done good, has said to all of us, we are not going to turn into a Oakland, a Stockton, a San Francisco, a Seattle. And my commitment and what I tell people, we the citizens of Modesto will never do that. So whatever happens, whatever we have to change, we have to work together and make sure that that's happened. And fortunately, that relationship I talked to you about with the county, that has really helped us out on the homeless issue. We worked very closely with the county with a focus on prevention. And as most of you know, we had the issue with Beard Brook because of the Ninth Circuit Court that said that if you don't provide somewhere for homeless to stay at, then they can stay in your parks, your streets, and so on and so forth. So we will always have an area where homeless can come to so we can enforce our municipal code that says that you can't park and you can't camp and you can't sleep in the parks or wherever. And so I think we've done a pretty good job at doing that. A lot of people don't agree with what we've done, but I think we had to do things. We had to make decisions. And now that we've established a contract relationship with the Salvation Army, we have got, I think they said yesterday, we're down to about 70 people that are left in the Mo's, which is the tent area down at Gateway. And once they are removed, everybody will be back out of that area, and then we will resurface it and we'll bring it back to where it was before everybody moved in there. We're trying different things, and that's what the homeless thing. If anybody had an answer about homelessness, we would know about it.
Right.
So nobody really knows what's the best, but I think we're heading in a direction that's beneficial. We're going to have the majority of people that have the ability to have a place to stay with the Salvation Army, and then the secondary housing, the potential of having the motel that we're purchasing with the Housing Authority on Kansas, another location on South 9th Street, and other possibilities that they're out actively looking at. Our hope is to address the people that are homeless. Why are they homeless? And try to get them into some secondary housing and some programming so they can get out of homelessness. And we just got to be committed to do that from now on.
Okay. Now, I know that, this is brought up before, but in other shows we talked about is there's a lot of veterans who are homeless,
There are some.
And so myself being a vet, if there's anything I can get involved with, or if there's anything to do to help homeless veterans to get them back into homes and get them on the road, I want to know about it.
And so we do have programs for just veterans as well. Again, the Housing Authority, there's some new housing that's been on the east side of Modesto, southeast side off of Yosemite area. And I've been excited about some of the homes that have been built up. Are there enough? There's not enough. And we have to continue to work hard to improve those things to provide our veterans the opportunity to get in housing that they can live in. That all being said, we also have to have the proper programming to encourage the veterans and the homeless people as well, to try to encourage them to get back up on their feet as well, and for themselves to help themselves throughout these issues. And then we should also be conscientious about those programs as well.
Right. Now, we were talking about housing. So normally in this third segment, we talk about real estate and what's going on. And I think one of the things was home affordability. One of the issues that we're having in Modesto is, interest rates are amazing this week. They're the lowest I've seen, and they I don't know how they keep getting lower. So I'm just going to throw it out there. If you haven't refinanced yet, call somebody and refinance. And if you don't have anybody, 209-404-1915, give me a call, or pound 250, say the key phrase real estate jerky. And if I can help you, I will get you to somebody to help you. But it's very important because one of the issues is we have not built enough homes. During the downturn, right before the downturn, we did double the amount of homes that we needed right that year and the year before. Now we're not even anywhere close to building enough homes just for population growth. And so the problem we're having is, and it's not a problem if you own a home, but for the next person to get in, like this last year, we went up 10% Modesto, right? They did again the year before that. They're saying that we're going to see continual increase in housing prices going forward because we are not building any homes. If you look at, we had somebody in here talking about projects that are being done in Oakdale, Riverbank. There's the one by the mall, but those are hundreds of homes. We need some thousands of homes built. So is there any changes or anything you're seeing change to zoning or anything else to help that affordability issue?
Well, one of the most important things that we've asked the staff to do is to put programs together to identify. We have changed our zoning, especially down in the downtown area. And so that would hope at some point to maybe look at maybe high apartments and those kinds of things. Hasn't happened. I think it's going to take a one-time developer that's able to understand that's something they would like to do. And once that gets going, I think we can move up there. But outside of the downtown area, we're doing the same thing. We want to be known eventually as that to have the developers to be able to come to Modesto and sit down and see that they can get through the process of planning and get through that process without making it a difficult process and reasonable. So in order to do that, we have to look at things different. And one of the processes, I'll give you an example, is that this is a commercial where we had a bank coming into an existing facility, and we have a new program that they call on Tuesdays that they can come down and they can sit with each of the planning areas and departments and in one room, and they can have everything done within 45 minutes to an hour.
Wow.
And before, they used to take weeks to months to get to that point. And I actually got to sit in there to the Umwalt Bank down on K Street, and who builds banks throughout the country. And they said this is like the second most expedient cities that they've ever dealt with. It's new, so we have some plannings and we have some things that we got to work out, but that's where we want to go. The council is looking at trying to make it more attractive for developers to come down here. We got to try to identify land. Okay, so we're getting down to the point that we're not in the city limits of Modesto. We don't have a whole lot of land. We still have some, but we don't have the kind of land that a big developer would like to come in and build housing, and we got to fix that.
I know, like in San Jose area, because one of my people I know, he's over there. He's building secondary homes inside of other, so they have a house and they're able to put a second unit on there.
We're doing that as well. We just passed that last month, to where we can clean up the fact that, for example, I have a couple rentals, and in one of my rentals in the closer downtown area has a very large backyard. And so there's the ability now to actually go back in and through planning and have the ability to build a secondary home on that piece of property. And it's not going to be very complicated because the process is something that Modesto's thought about sitting down and kind of identifying, similar to the Tuesday plan that I talked about, where they can sit down and they can get these things, get the fire department, every single department to sign off on your blueprints and then get started. That's what we want to do.
And originally I remember the fees were very expensive too. That was something that also, are they pretty much in line now? Are they the same? That's something being looked at?
So we have a committee that specifically looking at our fees. Okay. Something that came out of the process that the mayor put together, a 100-day committee. And so that process is working on, and we are getting closer to identifying those areas that we may be able to reduce. Some of the things that happened back 4, 5, 6, 8 years ago that was more expensive, we don't need to have that number dollar to come in for those fees today. And so we have to constantly be reviewing that, and then we have a committee that does that now. So that should be better.
Good. It sounds like it's going to be much easier to build, down the road or today.
It absolutely will.
And that's important.
And then we have the quality of staff people that we now can connect you directly, where in the past that it may have taken a little bit more steps. Today we can actually get the director of planning department to come out and talk to you specifically and set up a meeting with other staff members and kind of go over how things best be planned in your particular development.
Okay. Anything else you want to add there? Or is that pretty good?
No, it's right.
We did talk about fees, and one of the fees I always hear about is the mill tax.
Yeah, the mill tax is very, very important. Many people don't think the mill tax is a big deal.
I think most business owners don't think it's important.
Yeah, it's very important because it brings in, I forget off the top of my head, I probably should have got that number, but it's in the millions of dollars. We have to be able to have all these particular taxes in order for us to provide the services to the city. So we're a big city. We provide a ton of services, and you got to remember is that we got to be able to pay. We got to be able to pay for those services. So the mill taxes, what we have to do, and what we've done is we're preparing to look and reform those kinds of taxes that may not be fair to a particular business, and we're doing that now.
Well, I think also you should be able to tell them what it really goes for. What does that mill tax go for? I don't think a lot of business owners know that. They just go, I got to pay 0.0022 or whatever it is to the city again, another tax on top of everything else.
So one of the things I would encourage your listeners to do is get onto our website. We have, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've tried to put every single thing we can on the website so you can actually go in and actually identify where that money goes, where those expenses go. And if you have issues with that, this is one of the things that you look at your council members, myself and others, that you can contact and say, hey, I'd like to know about these things. And then I or some other council member will get back to you or have staff get back to you on those things. That's what we should be doing as elected officials.
Are you doing that?
Every day.
Okay.
Every day
Just-
somebody.
You said we should be.
No, every day. When I can tell you what I'm doing is that I get back to everybody. Anybody sends me an email, I always get back to them. And then I send it to the staff, and then staff gets back to them. We have to be held accountable for that. And if you don't, get a hold of me, get a hold of any elected official, and tell them I want to sit down and talk to you about this issue.
All right, we're going to go to break, but when we get back, I want to talk about what the mayor's power is. You know what I mean? Because you watch like Blue Blood, some of these New York, and they have all this power. They can get rid of people. What is the mayor of Modesto's real power? What is that?
We're not
So we
Blue
can
Blood.
talk about that when we come back.
We're not blue blood.
I know you're not. All right, so we're going to go to break. Advertisers, we're pretty happy to announce that you can now sponsor the show, and if you're, I'll even voice your ads for you if you like. Please contact us at radio@realestatejerky.com, and we'll be right back. Or you can get us at pound 250. Say the key phrase "real estate jerky." Talk to him. Get back. Sorry, I had to do the middle text. Because the last mayor said he was going to get rid of it.
We're not going to get rid of it.
I know, he said that.
Who did? Ted? No way.
It was one of the, it was him or the one right before him. No, Ted's not a business owner, right? It was
Yes.
He is?
Yes, he's an architect.
All right, you only got 9 minutes, man. We'll get you out of here.
All right, I need to get out. Yeah.
You'll make it 15 minutes. We'll get the sirens going. I'm ready to go if you are. So when we come
Ready.
back, we'll talk about the power and we'll talk about graffiti and we'll get out of here.
Leaving the bull behind. It's Real Estate Jerky.
We're back for our final segment of the show. I'm Ed Parcaut, mortgage advisor at Lending for a Living, with my guest, Doug Ridenour. He is a candidate in the upcoming mayor of Modesto election. Crazy how fast this kind of goes.
It goes quick.
Yeah. I mean, you remember from being here back in the days behind the badge. So we were talking about, I said at the break, I would like to talk about what power does the mayor have? He's elected official, right? What is he just oversees? What?
Yeah. So our city is set up on a council management style of form of government. So we have 7 elected officials, one of them being a mayor at large. So 6 of us are in district levels, and the mayor is elected at large. With the exception of few things, we're all equal as far as our responsibilities. Now, that being said, you would say, well, why doesn't the mayor? Well, the mayor does. The mayor is the person who's identified. He's elected at large. And so he's supposed to be, or she's supposed to be, our person that's the person that's out there being the lead for our city. And so that's why, and where leadership, communication, building relationships, all those kinds of things become paramount for that position. And so the mayor has that duty to make sure that he or she is out there doing those kinds of things. That being said, he's got 6 other elected officials that need to be also connected and doing the same thing, or at least looking for the vision that the council has identified through shared values. So that's what they're supposed to do. Our mayor, based on our charter, he can have come with a budget every year. He comes up, finalizes the mayor's budget, and then produces that to the city council. And the city council overall has the ultimate decision on whether they like what the mayor has produced from the staff. The staff goes through this process and then brings it to the mayor, and the mayor may change things around, do things that he has that authority under our charter. And so those are things that are significant with our mayorship that they have over, say, a mayor that's a strong mayor. A strong mayor is like the CEO. We have a CEO. He's the city manager. He's the one who runs the city for the council.
So we're totally different charter than like New York or some of those
Absolutely.
other places, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So we got about 6.5 more minutes. So seems like, who are you running against? Do you want to talk about that, or do you want to just leave them a nameless?
No, I don't know. It doesn't mind. Just the people who have announced.
Right.
There's the mayor's running, Ted Brownwell. You have Rick Countryman, Bert Lippard, Carmen Sabatino. I don't know. And there's
one more.
There's one more, and
And
I don't remember his name. I'm
Marlene
sorry.
took my paper, so I couldn't look at it.
So there is another gentleman that's going to run, and I frankly I don't remember his name, and I don't legitimately.
She's telling me it's on here.
So-
Anyway, so are there going to be any debates?
I don't know. I assume there will be. Last time there were. Typically in a city kind of election, there's not a lot, but there should be, because we have I think 6 total candidates. I would assume that there would be some debates that would be coming about. So I assume that those are things that's going to happen.
Okay, well, I mean, we would like to be involved, or I could, be part of that if you'd like. No, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I wouldn't mind have some people on here and have a live show, people calling in, asking questions.
Well, this is the process, Ed, and all of us should be coming forward in this setting or any other setting and getting out to the community and telling them what they think or what they anticipate their moves and drives and interests and shared values are going to be. Because that's how we get it out, especially in a city at our size.
Right, and I like the fact that, like yourself, you don't talk politician.
Right.
Because that's one thing I don't like is like, just answer the question, how you're going to be, what you think. Yeah. That's why people want to vote for you. Now, the election was changed, right? How?
It was changed, and unfortunately, they didn't include the runoff end of it. It was changed because California wanted to go to even years. So I've finished my actual 4-year tenure last month. But because it was changed and went to the city, the citizens approved it to extend it for another year to go on to
even
year. And so that made sense. The problem is that we didn't talk about the runoff. And so, for example, we're going to be elected in November. It's unlikely that any one of us will probably pull a 51%, 50 plus 1%. And so we'll probably go to a runoff in February, which doesn't make sense to me. It never has made sense to me. And hopefully our charter review committee that's being established right now will look at that and change that in the future. So as it stands right now, in November we'll go to the election. It'll be a general election. The top 2 people then will move to February for a runoff.
So you would think, that you would just, whoever wins, but it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way, no. Yeah. So, and if I can, one of the other things I'm excited about in Modesto is obviously our history. Our graffiti history. We got a classic car group that is trying to establish a classic car museum. That's going to happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's going to happen.
I didn't hear about that.
I'm part of that. I'd love to come back in and maybe later on talk to you about it. And I know people say, well, since I've been here my whole life, did I ever drag 10th Street or drag McHenry? And the answer is yes. The problem is that because I entered into law enforcement, my dad tended to make sure that I didn't get carried away with the dragging. But I did. But I didn't get connected until I was older. And I'm very excited about graffiti. Today I own a 41 Buick. And I'm excited about those things. And Modesto has a heck of a history about cars.
Right, yes it does.
It's got a heck of a history of cars and the excitement, Chris Murphy and some of the things that are going on in Modesto. We got an exciting group of people. Here's the biggest gem and jewel, in my opinion, for Modesto. It's not necessarily the geographic area, because that's nice because we can be hour and a half just about anywhere. But it's the people who already live here in Modesto. They're the ones who make Modesto move. Gateway, Grisada Park, Buyer Park. All the citizens here in Modesto got together and say, look, the city don't have the money, can't do it. We're going to do it. We're going to get together, we're going to fundraise, and we're going to make these changes. Insulin Park, just last month. Things are happening in Modesto, and people say there's nothing to do about Modesto. Just go down anytime, Friday and Saturday night downtown, and there's tons of things to do. So think of this, the Modesto View that Chris Murphy puts out. He lets you know about everything that's happening in Modesto.
Keep going. You got 2 minutes, man.
So those are the kinds of things that I get real excited about, and the fact that just our history. There's a lot of exciting things happening in this museum. Is going to happen. There's a board, which I'm a board member of, that this is going to happen. It's just going to identify the location, and then we're going to eventually have a graffiti car museum here in Modesto.
And then what the cars will be donated to be in there, or be in there for
obviously,
so many times?
Obviously, we haven't got to that point, but that's our thought. Is that we have so many cars here. I am assuming that there will be people that would love to have their cars on display for a period of time. And then there probably will be some purchase of cars that will be dedicated to the museum at all times. But there's a tremendous amount of draw and people that are interested. They've tried to do this for 50, 60 years, and it's actually happening in Modesto. We've got a nonprofit organization, 501c3, that's happening right now. It is going to happen. It's just locating the location. We're in the process of trying to do that right now, and so it's going to happen.
You think is it going to be downtown? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, we'd love to have it downtown, but downtown's getting pretty maxed out. we need a large area, probably 50 to 80,000 square feet, in order to have a decent museum. So we're working on it.
Yeah, I think it'd probably be hard to find that big of a space downtown.
Maybe. But anywhere in Modesto, especially close to the downtown area, would work.
I think it'd be important to be close to downtown.
I do too.
Because I mean that's where graffiti starts, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to go there during it. And I don't know, you probably don't know this, but we have graffiti on the show every year. So this last year they came on and talked about the whole plan about it. So
well, our committee is set up. We're our board, and we have our advisory group, and so please include us this year.
We always will.
Okay.
Doug, thanks again for being here.
You bet. Thank you so much.